at the end of the day, with all of these clauses and with all of the people go through these prenups, the end goal is not to get divorced. No one goes into a marriage wanting to get divorced, right? Like the goal is like if you guys are able to talk about these hard things, if you're able to like sit down and be like, yeah, if we get divorced, who really gets Frodo the dog? If you guys can have that conversation, if you can figure out like, hey, if we do get separated, like what does feel fair for me, for you? Because if you guys are on completely opposite sides of things, like that is a signal.
You're listening to Founder Mode,
where we talk to builders rethinking how technology intersects with life and real relationships.
Today's episode is about modern love and modern money, and how one founder is transforming prenups into something built for this generation.
We'll explore how AI, empathy, and financial literacy can actually make relationships stronger, not colder.
Jason, you own one of your companies with your wife, and you co-founded your first startup with a husband and wife co-founders.
Yep.
What have you learned from all that?
A lot. Some people, when I tell them these things, are like, what? You work with your wife? And to be clear, my wife has a day job. She's full-time at that. I would call her the chairman of the board of our company. So, every night before bed, I get to
As long as her title's above yours, I don't think
for
she
sure.
cares.
Yeah, she's senior to me. And every night before bed, we have the board meeting. We have a nightly board meeting where she beats me up and tells me all the things I did wrong.
But I do think the one thing that, I'm sort of known, loved, and hated for is just like, I definitely don't try to like sugarcoat stuff. I'm pretty direct and just say what I'm thinking. And sometimes that offends people. I think it also holds people to a higher bar. Kind of learned that from my dad, which definitely was the more command and control, like me growing up. And so I think for me, I would say I've evolved in terms of where things go, in terms of how I view sort of both partnerships, personal and professional. And I think like I've worked best with people that challenge me, where when we challenge each other, we sort of both kind of like bring out the best in each other. And I think I definitely suffer in places where the pressure cracks those that I'm working with because I'm too relenting, or I just tune out because it's like, man, they're not getting it and this isn't going. So I think to me, the magic and sort of what this conversation is that I think would be helpful in all of those domains is the notion of bringing up this conversation first and sort of just, sort of asking the tough questions, sort of just thinking through some of that. And so I think with that, we should find out what she thinks.
Yeah, I think that's right. And one more thought that you just made me think of is like both in marriage and business, whether with your life partner or your co-founders, like have the hard conversations before you get into the long-term relationship.
Fair. Ronke's a co-founder and operator who's redefining how couples plan their future. Her work combines tech, legal expertise, and human connection.
Yeah, she's helping turn one of life's most uncomfortable conversations into a moment of clarity, trust, and partnership. Kevin, should we bring her on?
Let's do it. Ronke, welcome to Founder Mode. You're bringing prenups to the modern era. Today, we're talking about how AI and honest conversations can strengthen relationships before the paperwork ever shows up.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Very excited to chat.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you here. This is going to be a fun one. You've called prenups therapy, people reading, and diplomacy rolled into one. What's driving the shift from taboo to empowerment?
I would say the biggest driver is just how people talk about and think about money. And when I'm saying people, really just couples, particularly millennial and Gen Z couples, compared to our parents' generation where money was this taboo topic. Maybe your dad controls the money, your mom never really knows what's going on. It's just very different today. Usually both sides of the couple are working. People have money before they're even getting married, right? Because people are now getting married in their 30s. They're getting married even in their 40s. So you already have a career. You already have money going into the relationship. So now it makes marriages and the financial planning you do during marriages, the financial planning you do in case of a divorce, much more complicated. So that's a lot of the kind of drivers behind prenups. The other thing is just, candidly, I think a lot of people saw their parents get divorced. So there is just this kind of shift in mentality about how you think about marriage and what you can actually do to prevent divorces, which, as you guys probably know, a lot of divorces end up being about money and the inability to communicate about money. And what we saw when we were talking to our friends who are very much, our potential like market for this is the traditional way of doing prenups did not match how couples talked about or wanted their prenups to actually be created.
I like it. I'm very curious, just kind of continuing to click on this entry point that you've chosen and the explosion in kind of AI and emotional finance and how kind of the world is changing. You've built these tools that use AI to help couples talk about money. How do you make something this emotional feel safe, approachable, and not this kind of thing, to your point, that was decades ago just completely off limits, not okay to talk about?
Yeah, so fundamentally, I think about the combination of technology plus human experts. It's that combination that helps you like deliver this product experience that really like resonates with people. So the human experts side, I'll start there. So we work with some of the best family lawyers in the country. And what they bring is obviously the knowledge of family law and how it works, but they also have the knowledge of having navigated couples through really emotional and tough things, whether it's divorce, whether it's prenup, and all of that. Based on that, our family lawyers generally have, let's call it like guidelines, prompts. They have a good idea of like how to have two people, whether they're at the beginning of the marriage or the end of the marriage, have a difficult conversation. So we really relied on them first to have an understanding of the best way to conduct this conversation. And then because it's, 2025, 2026, you can actually train an AI based on kind of like the best family lawyers so that at least some of the like high level guidance and all of that can be delivered to clients personalized for like their specific situation. All of our users always start with our AI conversation. It helps educate them. It helps teach them how to talk to their partner, but ultimately we still want them at the end of that AI conversation to then work with a human expert who can deliver the kind of, I don't know, the value, the way people speak. There's something that human beings can do that AI still can't do. And so that's still the value you get from talking to the lawyer. And then obviously in delivering the final document, you still want a human lawyer to overlook the entire process.
What made you think that, when you started the company, that it could handle something as personal as marriage and finance? And then how have you sort of seen that through these early days of like, hey, it's actually working? Like, wow, people prefer this over like sort of some other unstructured or open way.
Yeah, well, it's like you guys said, like everyone's already using it. Regardless of whether someone's coming to Neptune or not, they are almost certainly using Chat or Gemini or Claude to talk about these topics. So these are just like consumer behaviors that are happening. The interesting twist that we've put on things is that generic, call it like ChatGPT or Google AI or all of that, it's okay talking about these hard topics, right? It's fine, but you guys have used ChatGPT. You've seen it go off the rails and do the like, you're right, like blah, 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 blah. You want to keep all of your money to yourself? I think you're justified, like blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah.
Because you can get ChatGPT, you can get ChatGPT can say anything to make you
Very
happy,
agreeable.
right? Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think what we saw was that one, like this behavior is happening that people are using AI. The question was like, could we build an AI experience that's actually helps you get to the outcome that you need to get to, which is you don't know how to ask ChatGPT the right questions for it to give you the right responses of how to guide yourself through a prenup or through any other emotional conversation. So when you're going through our AI chat experience, it's essentially been trained specifically on like how to be essentially this like good emotional counselor, money coach, couples counselor for couples. So you get all of the benefits of AI being able to be smart, being able to personalize its response, but it's specifically trained for this use case. And so that's why like our experience ends up being way better than ChatGPT or Claude. Not surprisingly, most of our users are using ChatGPT or Claude. Some of them even discover us through ChatGPT before they come to our website. But when they come to our website, we consistently get positive reviews for the platform.
Vertical AI use cases we talk about all the time on the show, and I think
Yep.
there's definitely a place, and you guys have built something that's very specific. And I think that ChatGPT is a great generalist, but
Yep.
there's a reason why you have this network of attorneys, and you've built this kind of corpus of knowledge that's very specific to this challenge, which I love. I love a solution that is more than just a wrapper that involves humans.
Yeah.
Humans are in the loop, right? And so
Yep. Exactly.
You've actually written about couples navigating, tough things like relocation and salary imbalances. How can financial planning tools help kind of close some of those gaps?
So I would say two things. I'm going to speak specifically about Neptune. The two ways that the financial planning tools can help. One is with understanding just the basic realities of the situation. And second is with the emotional navigation of the situation. But just understanding the like realities of the situation, we have tons of like calculators and other guides like, specifically for example, if you're a startup founder, a startup employee, and you want to understand what happens to your equity when you're getting married, like what the state laws say about what percentage you own, your partner's owns, and all of that, like we have things built out for that. So that's more of the just like call it understand the practical realities of like what's going on. Then for the emotional navigation, again, this is kind of like where AI comes in and the human experts come in because most of these like big decisions that you're doing, like relocate, like we're relocating to another city for my job, and then suddenly my partner's career is not going to be quite the same. Like there's like the reality of it of like what's the implications on taxes, what's the implication on how much we're going to save or grow our investments, and then there's the reality of my partner feeling peeved because sure, like we're making more money, but like he's now sacrificing something. So I think it's like helping understanding that that's always going on when there are these like big decisions with money is like why we've taken this, call it like holistic approach of like, yeah, we'll build the tooling, yeah, we'll build the AI to help you, but we also want to give you access to the right human beings to help you guys learn how to communicate and talk to each other about these things. Because ultimately, like, it's great to have more money. I certainly love having more money, but your
Yes.
relationship with your partner is the most important thing in each of your lives. So helping that relationships grow strong and stay strong is like incredibly important.
Disclaimer, founder mode is not an attorney and we are not providing legal advice.
Please, thank you. That is written all
Ronke
over our
also not
website.
providing legal advice, but we are here to help and Neptune is here to help. So Ronke, now please answer the question.
The smartest clauses tend to be around spousal support or alimony. And for anyone who doesn't know, this is what happens if you guys get separated. The richer spouse usually is paying some amount of money on a monthly annual basis to the kind of poorer spouse. Spousal support's a very weird thing. But yeah, it's spousal support's very emotionally fraught. Most people come in having some conception of alimony, right? Like you've heard about it in movies. It's what the rich gold digger, the 20-year-old rich gold digger like gets from like the 80-year-old man that she marries, right? But like that's the movies. And then all of a sudden you're in a prenup conversation with your partner and you're now having to make decisions about like, hey, what does happen if we get separated? It's one thing if we are both we're both working right now, which is our typical couple. Both maybe there's a little bit of an income difference, but it's not significant. So then it feels like everyone starts the conversation being like, let's just waive spousal support. It doesn't matter. And then you start talking to the attorneys or you talk to our AI and we start talking about like what if, the what if scenarios. What if one of you gets disabled? What if one of you takes a step back when you have children? What if things don't work out? You think your career is going great, but one of your careers stalls. Like what happens in all of those situations? And when people start talking about that, you start having these like realizations about like what does kind of like fairness mean in your particular relationship. So those tend to be the smartest, like kind of like more complicated like discussions in the prenup. And I think a lot of couples have really thoughtful approaches to it as to when it applies, when it doesn't, and all of that. So those are the ones I really like. And then my favorite clauses, just like on the side, are the pet custody clauses. So we have maybe, I would say 10 to 15% of our couples have some type of clause about what happens to the dog or the cats if you guys get separated. And
Incredible.
on the surface, it seems funny, but then you talk to divorce attorneys and it's like,
These are more
if
children.
people, yeah, no, it
Yeah.
is. And it's like, most states don't consider pets children for
Their
obvious
property.
reasons.
Yeah.
They're considered property. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And like it becomes this huge contentious thing that divorced couples go through. Just being able to like figure a lot of that stuff early is incredibly helpful. At the end of the day, with all of these clauses and with all of the people who go through these prenups, the end goal is not to get divorced. No one
Yeah.
goes into a marriage wanting to get divorced. right? Like
Yeah.
the goal is like if you guys are able to talk about these hard things, if you're able to like sit down and be like, yeah, if we get divorced, who really gets Frodo the dog? If you guys can have that conversation, if you can figure out like, hey, if we do get separated, like what does feel fair for me, for you?
Yeah.
Because if you guys are on completely opposite sides of things, like that is a signal. That is a signal about how you're thinking about money, how you're thinking about values, and all of that. So if you can get through the prenup conversation, ultimately you actually are less likely to get divorced. That is like the craziest thing about prenup. It's this
Is it
huge insurance policy for divorce. It's all of this stuff, but like just going through the process makes you less likely to get divorced. So
it's
again,
quite
the smartest
counterintuitive.
clause, it
Yeah.
is, but it's like the smartest clauses are essentially the clauses that I wouldn't say cause you to fight, but cause the most discussion with you. Because then once you get through that process, like almost all of our clients like talk about the sense of like relief and the sense of like we got through this. We can talk about this.
I think that there's something here that's really interesting. I grew up in a family that my parents are still together, we're together, and
Mhm.
I think they instilled in me this weird thought that like you shouldn't like have a prenup. Like you're supposed to marry for love and for life and like it's going to be
Yeah.
amazing and my parents wouldn't fight in front of us and my brother and I and so we had no idea that there was any conflict in the relationship. So completely unrealistic view of what relationships
Yeah.
are. And I think what's refreshing about this and I'd be curious to get your take is like it almost just feels like there's a massive education gap. Like that there's
Yeah.
just and so how are you closing that gap? And then just to kind of pivot it a little bit into the founder mode conversation, like we got a lot of founders that listen to this show that are building companies that are, doing their 83Bs and QSBS stacking
Mhm.
and trying to set it up for generational wealth. And they have no idea where to start with this stuff. So like what's the mistake to avoid? What's the thing to do? And how do we kind of tie this back to, hey, it's great to be in love, but also maybe
Yeah. No, the yeah, at its core, it starts with education, like you said. So again, this is why the AI that we have is specifically trained to ask you the right questions up front. And in the way it asks questions, it's essentially teaching you how things work. So I'll use spousal support for an example. Like usually when people go through our AI chat on the prenup side of things, it starts asking questions like, oh, like have you, you indicated to me that your founder, your partner is let's say a doctor. Have you guys ever talked about spousal support? Like right now, you're making a lot more than she is. And so most people will say no because most people have not talked to their partner about spousal support for obvious reasons. And then we'll start teaching you like, hey, here are the some of the basics of how spousal support works in your state. Here is typically what couples like you do. So here are three options for couples like you do. Which options are resonating with you? Which options do you still have questions on? So that kind of like Q&A process, but like not you asking the questions, it's us asking the questions, actually works incredibly well at educating people on whether it's prenup topics or now as we're starting to expand into estate planning topics, right? Because the questions you might have about prenups might be more about like, okay, how do we negotiate between what's good for me versus what's good for you? With estate planning, it's more about like who are going to be the guardians for our children. What do we think about what's appropriate to leave to our children, to other people who are not our children? How do we want to distribute things to our children? Do I want to give everything to my kids at 18? Do I think they need some type of trust that distributes it over time? All of that. And all of those conversations are certainly, again, it's just like there's factual parts of it, but it's also conversations about values. It's informed by how you grew up. It's informed about how you think about money and all of that. So yeah, I'd say start with education, let an expert kind of lead the questioning of you to get to the like facts of how you think about things. And then we basically take it from there.
How do you guys think about that as like just a roadmap for the company? And like how much of that do you feel like in the next year or so you guys sort of like branch into like kind of this, call it financial architect of the sort of partnership outside of like the prenup being, I think, a pretty incredible wedge?
Yeah, a great question. So we see ourselves as essentially acting as this financial legal concierge for couples that helps them figure out their values, figures out what they want in life, and then helps them actually deliver that outcome. So to your point with your friends, the biggest gap as you get older is the long list of all the things you don't know, you don't know. And I think starting from that perspective of I'm not going to go out there and just specifically advertise we're doing trust and we're helping you with irrevocable life insurance trust because most people don't even know what that is. But if I tell you that, hey, you have 2 kids, you're XYZ age, there's a long list of things that you need to do in order to maximize how much money goes to your kids in a trust situation, or maximize how much earnings you're keeping, or protect your parents or protect your spouse, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, great. And you're going to tell me what to do and like handle the things for me. Like that's kind of what's been resonating with our clients as we've started to talk about this expansion beyond prenups. So that's how I would say we think about it, which is first, like, what are the kind of like long list of things that we can do? And then because we're a business and we have to make money, targeting specific demographics. With prenups, it's very much around people who are getting married. The next kind of like big milestone we're looking at, in addition to that, are people who are early parents of children. When you're having your first child or your second child, there's just this list of things that you need to do. And everyone just kind of knows they need to do it, but they don't actually do it because someone has to do the research, someone has to do the signing up, someone has to like educate me and all of that. And it feels like it's important, but it never feels like I have the time to do it. So let's take that load off of you. Like come to us, we'll handle it. We'll give you the high level education that you need for things, and then we'll have our experts and our team handle the rest.
So let's talk about the future.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the category, right? Like, I think with everything, AI is creating so much opportunity. But when you look ahead, you've talked about estate planning beyond the prenup. Is it AI driven estate planning? Is it relationship
Mm,
fintech? Something entirely new? Like, where is this
yeah.
category going, and how are you and Neptune thinking about that?
I think about it just from what's the outcome that we're going to provide to people, and then what are the tools that we can use to provide that outcome. So, outcome is you feel like you, your partner, your family are set up, that you are set up with the right trust, you're set up with the right taxes, you're set up with the right prenups, you're set up with the right everything. And we've taken care of that. Now, our way to deliver that is going to always be a mix of AI plus human experts. AI is gonna keep getting better. Like, I think that that is gonna happen for sure. I will make a bet. I'm clearly making a bet on that and starting this company. But I am also a huge, huge believer in the power of human connection and the power of, like, human experts. And at the end of the day, I would not trust a totally AI generated trust. I'm sorry. I'm not putting all of my hard work into an AI generated trust and then being like, great, that's all set. I want to talk to a human being. Most people want to talk to a human being. I think what changes over time is how much is done by the AI versus the human. But the human is always going to be in the loop. The AI is always going to be there as kind of like this associate helping with a lot of the work. And then the outcome, as long as a good outcome is delivered to you, as long as like you feel confident about I like financial architect, Kevin, by the way. I'm gonna mule on that wording, but my financial architects at Neptune have structured things properly for me. As long as that's happening, I think that's all our customers care about. But yeah, I'd say AI plus humans is kind of the way for the future.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think the magic ends up being in this sort of like really finding the best. I think the financial architect's actually one of the names I gave one of my chat agents because I think part of it is like really design. Honestly, like because if you think about it, it's like, hey, look, here's what I know today. Here's where I need to go. Tell me all the things I'm missing. Like a random one for me that was like disability insurance. Like when I was like first working, it's like, man, like what happens if I like, go out and I, catch my bike in the spokes of my, chain and like I lose my fingers. I'm like, dude, all I do is type. Like if I can't type, like we didn't have the voice to text we have now, maybe I'd be okay today. But, 15 years ago, 16 years ago, my daughter was born, we didn't have that. And so I think there's, just different levels that, you don't think about. And it's pretty interesting. So, man, this has been incredible. Like, where can people follow you, follow your work? Like, if they want to know more about Neptune, how do they sort of get connected?
So obviously our website first, meetneptune.com. We're doing a pretty big overhaul over the next few weeks. So you'll start to see a lot more of the services I'm talking about today beyond prenups, which is exciting. And then LinkedIn, I post a lot. Jason, thank you for reading all of my many posts about the
Love them.
couples that we have. Yeah, I post a lot about just the stories that we hear and some of the anecdotes that have been helpful. And I think just sharing what other people are going to has always been very helpful for many of our couples. So you can find me there too.
Awesome. Any kind of offers or anything we should share with the founder mode
Yes.
audience for Neptune?
Yes, Ronke 100 So that's my name, Ronke 100 for $100 off any of our services.
Nice. Great. Well, we'll include that in the show notes. This has been so smart, grounded, so relevant to the conversation and the time that we're in. Thank you so much for joining us, Ronke.
Thank you guys for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
That was a great conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It felt different than some of the things we talk about, for me at least, like the whole this isn't just an AI wrapper. There's humans in the loop. There's lawyers there that are hoping to craft the right planning for these couples thinking about, getting married and then their future roadmap around having kids and estate planning. So I think it's a super interesting time to build on top of all this technology that you and I talk about every episode. Kevin, what were your top 5 takeaways from today's conversation?
Yeah, I agree. Super practical episode and just real good use of AI, where I think a lot of cases we don't get as excited or it looks like a wrapper. I think this one's like, there's a lot of meat there, and I think that's exciting. So I think the top 5 that I saw was this, like, couples are now entering marriage later. So they have assets, careers, and sort of potentially some early, but in the later years, financial asymmetry. And then, prenups really create this structured way to talk about money early. And 3, Gen AI really validates feelings, and vertical AI really guides couples into resolution. It's like really looking for something deeper to find an answer. And then 4, AI prepares conversations, but human experts actually handle the nuance and decisions and actually get it, kind of set up correctly. And then finally, the hardest clauses surface values and often strengthen relationships.
Yep. If this episode made you think differently about love, money, or planning for the future, share it with someone who's navigating that same journey right now.
And if you haven't already, subscribe to Founder Mode, and we'll keep bringing you the conversations that challenge how we think about building companies, relationships, and ourselves. That's it for today, because modern relationships deserve modern systems.